Father, the Church is describing to us two ways of life. One kind of life leads towards damnation, while the other kind of life leads towards eternal happiness in heaven. The first way of life that is burdensome and wearisome leads to hell, and Christ described it as a yoke that is heavy and burdensome. While the way of life that leads to everlasting life is described by Christ as a yoke that is easy and a burden that is very light. The first kind of life can be described by Saint Thomas of Aquin as a way of life by which we please man, while the second way of life is the way of life in which we please God. In the first way of life, by which we please man, we begin, of course, by trying to please ourselves, doing everything to please ourselves, to please other people, to please our husband and wife, children and friends, to please the government, the police, all human beings. Now, this is very difficult because it is impossible to know what pleases hundreds of different kinds of people. While on the other hand, it is very easy to please God because we are only pleasing one God who had expressed to us what are the things and impossible to live. And that is only describing ourselves. And then imagine the 100 different other peoples that you have to please. You really have to please only their bodies, and they have 1,000 different bodily desires of which you have no idea what they are. And most often than not, when you try to please them, you are committing a mistake. You instead displease them. So these are the things that makes life so burdensome, that our soul, we, each one of us, are all living with a body that is constantly contradicting our soul. And we are living with hundreds of people around us also contradicting the desires of our soul. And then Saint Thomas of Aquin adds, and then we are conscious of our sins. That is another burden. Thirdly, just because we are constantly pleasing ourselves and pleasing other people, God does not tell us what is the right thing to do, because God only tells us what is the right thing to do if we are pleasing Him, but not if we are pleasing ourselves and pleasing other humans. So in which case, everything we do is wrong, because God doesn't help people who are pleasers of men. He only helps those who are pleasers of God. And so Christ in today's Mass continues to tell us how we can carry instead the burden of Christ, which is easy and very light. Of course, St. Thomas of Aquinas says, but the commands of God are more difficult rather than the commands of men. The commands of men are weird, but they are easy to do. The commands of Christ are so difficult, like to love one's enemies. So how can it be easy and light? Well, because Christ says, if you carry my yoke, which is my commandments, and if you carry my burden, which is light, which is to be humble and meek, I will help you. So imagine, if God helps you, what is so difficult becomes very, very easy and very, very light. So Christ gives us the way which is easy and light. And He says, in order to live this way of life in which you please me rather than man, all you have to be is to be gentle